now and learn more. 877-247-1581. 877-247-1581. 877-247-1581.
Here's a great way to save money on your prescription medications. If you take Viagra or Cialis, we can give you a way to pay as little as $2 a pill. Compare that to prices as high as $60 per tablet. These pills work for men and women to improve their sexual performance. And now for the price of 2 or 3 pills, you can get nearly 100. There's no need to pay expensive prices for Viagra or Cialis. Call now with your prescription and pay as little as $2 a pill. We offer 24/7 service and always free delivery and confidential packaging. Change your life for the better and have fun. Call Pharmacy Shop 24/7 to get generic versions of Viagra or Cialis for as little as $2 a pill, plus free discreet shipping.
800-627-3988. 800-627-3988. 800-627-3988. That's 800-627-3988.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
At Romika Designs, we're more than just a laser engraving and specialty design company. Much more. I'm Ron Phillips, co-owner of Romika Designs, and if you can dream it, we can probably make it. We can custom laser cut and engrave on nearly all material. Great for one-of-a-kind gifts, home decor, business and specialty items, or personalized and logo designs created just for you or your company. Allow us to become your go-to gift and specialty project partner. Romika Designs can help make your ideas a reality. We're ready to help you design and create that special gift for any occasion or engrave your personal or business logo on just about any product. View our designs at romikadesigns.com or simply email us with your ideas. We specialize in custom design and would be honored to have the opportunity to discuss it with you. Call us at 817-400-4040, email info@romikadesigns.com, or visit us on the web at romikadesigns.com.
Out-of-date carpet giving you the blues? Tired of your old dingy and broken tile? Let my friends at the Floor Store in Cleburne, Texas give your home the makeover it deserves. This is Old Taco Joe coming to you for the Floor Store. Whether it's carpet, tile, wood flooring, or real wood laminate, the Floor Store can cover all of your flooring needs. Located at 405 West Henderson Street in Cleburne, Texas, owner Brent Harris can help. Shower tile, tub surrounds, even backsplashes. Give them a call today at 817-641-9444. The Floor Store, they got you covered.
You're listening to Joco Community Radio.
Welcome to the Reach Across Johnson County segment on Joco Community Radio, where you can join us live here on Facebook or download the TuneIn Radio app. It's free, where we are live 365 on Joco Community Radio, the voice of Johnson County. Reach's mission is to support safe and healthy choices vital to the well-being of our youth, families, and community. This show will guide you, educate you, and inspire you to be a part of the solution and to reach out and help make a difference in our communities. What began as a local movement in the city of Midlothian grew to include programs throughout Ellis County with only a few short years, and eventually expanded into neighboring Johnson County, Texas. And here we are today. And today I've got some new co-hosts with me. I'm going to let everybody kind of introduce themselves. And then we also have a very special guest that's coming in studio with us today, Brooke Vaughan. She is with the Johnson County Family Crisis Center. So we'll introduce her in just a moment. But I'm Shari Phillips. I'm one of the co-hosts. I'm the community liaison at Reach Council, and I work in Johnson and Ellis County.
My name is Ashley Petkin, and I am the new Johnson County Coalition Coordinator. And yeah, I'm happy to be here today.
Welcome.
My name is Emily Staffelbein. I am the COVID coordinator for Johnson County.
Awesome. And then we've got our special guest. I'm going to read a little bio on Brooke here real quick. So Brooke has served as the primary prevention specialist at the Family Crisis Center since 2015. It's a nonprofit serving victims and survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. She is also the community educator for the agency, where she spreads awareness on domestic violence and sexual assault. Brooke is also a certified victim advocate trainer for victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, training law enforcement and volunteers on trauma-informed care and crisis intervention. And so, in case you haven't gathered, we're going to talk about teen dating violence, as it is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. And first of all, welcome, Brooke.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. We're so glad that you're here. This is something that I guess people don't necessarily think about that often, but we really should. We should be having conversations with our teens as they start dating.
Yes, definitely. So teenagers, actually, we start seeing violent behaviors as young as 6th grade. So that's
Goodness.
it's like 12 years old, 11,
Wow.
12.
They're babies still.
Yeah.
I know, it's crazy. And I don't know if it's just the use of phones these days or access to easier communication with people, but it has gotten, even I was just in middle schools all last week, and they said some of the 6th graders were telling me that they saw these behaviors in 4th grade. So we do see it really, really young.
Well, good grief. Okay, well let's just start talking about what is teen dating violence. What are the things that we should be aware of?
Yeah, so teen dating violence is actually any type of abuse, which could be emotional, physical, sexual harassment, psychological, verbal. It's most of the time people just think of physical abuse.
Right.
But the things that we try to really talk to our kids about in schools is it doesn't start off physical. So what are those signs and what are those red flags before it gets there?
Okay.
And that's kind of what parents need to think about, because most of the time when people say domestic violence or they say sexual assault, they say teen dating violence, they think of, I always refer to it as like the Lifetime movie, you know, of there's kind of this role of one power and control person, and it's physical, and then they're scared for their life. But there's so many more steps before that are really important to pay attention to, and especially for kids, because that's what we see most of the time there.
Is the teens?
Mm-hmm.
Oh goodness.
Well, and the emotional abuse and manipulation and just going through their phones and things like that.
Is manipulation, is that a big part of it, do you think, or is that where you would see it start?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say definitely so. I mean, there's a lot that goes into manipulation and what that looks like, but it does start with just the little bitty things that they control each other with, whether it's, I don't want you to talk to that friend, or let me go. If you weren't cheating on me, then let me go through your phone. I want to read your text messages, or I don't like that shirt. You're never going to wear it again. Those are some of the first things. And then little by little, they just kind of change. The teenagers change, and they kind of, I think sometimes schools, especially in smaller schools, are hard if their partner's in school with them, because then they feel like, well, who are my friends? And if they're isolated from their friends, then afterwards they're like, well, who am I going to sit with? Who am I going to talk to? And so sometimes I do think it's easier for them to just stay in the relationship than is to leave, because they don't want to have to deal with it at school.
Yeah, I could see that. Do you see it being more like females are, well,
so
is it kind of both, or?
So females are definitely more likely to be the victim of physical abuse. But I tell the guys all the time, that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. Your girlfriend should not feel like she owns you or tells you that you shouldn't be able to play sports because it takes up too much time, or you shouldn't, she shouldn't be able to tell you who you can and can't hang out with and who you can't talk to. And so all of those, are forms of just manipulation and control, power and control. So the dynamics of how a female will control is different than how male typically will control.
Okay. Are you able to go into more kind of details on that, on what to kind of look for, or?
So there's, as far as for a parent, as far as for a teen.
Let's actually talk about both.
Yeah.
I mean, for let's start with the teen, I guess. Sometimes I think people don't always realize that that it is, teen dating violence. They aren't aware that they're actually in that situation at times.
So, as far as for the teen, what we know is that 1 in 3 teenagers will be in an abusive or unhealthy relationship.
1 in
Wow.
3.
1 in 3. And so that could just be any type of abuse, whether it's just any type of power and control behavior, just an unhealthy, toxic relationship, verbal, emotional, control type thing. And then as far as physical, it's 1 in 11 for girls, and then I think it's 1 in 15 for boys as far as for physical abuse that happens. So you're not looking for bruises, really. You're looking for changes in behaviors. I will say that 75% of teenagers are going to talk to their friends before they go to an authority member, a family member, a parent. So that's probably a pretty good start, is that if their friends start noticing changes in their behavior, not wanting to hang out with them, not talking to them, just kind of isolating themselves, but we have a new boyfriend or we have a new girlfriend. Those are really big red flags for both, and for kids to look for too. Sometimes kids, I will say for guys, as far as the controlling and the phone, guys will tell me, well, I asked my buddy and he said his girlfriend reads her through his text messages, so I just thought it was normal.
Okay.
And
so
I'm
that shouldn't be a normal thing.
Yeah. I'm like, I asked my teenagers, I say, well, do you like it when your parents read through your text messages? And they're like, no, that's an invasion of my privacy.
Yeah.
I said, well, it's still an invasion of your privacy, whether it's your boyfriend or your girlfriend. They should not have the right to go through. I said, imagine if you tried to go up to your mom and you said, Mom, I need to go through your text messages to prove that you love me. I said, they just all laughed. They're like, oh my gosh, she would slap me. She would, And I'm like, okay, I said, so it's the same thing. It's not going to prove anything. It's just going to prove that who's in control. It's just a control mechanism, control to power and like get you to change something that you're doing.
So who typically reports? Is it a friend that reports, or is it the victim that finally does something? Or
what do you mean as far as reporting to who?
Like getting help?
So
or come to see y'all or something like that. What
we get a lot of referrals from the schools.
From the schools?
Yeah.
Okay.
So counselors will call, they will notice, they will pick up on it. They see and hear a lot of things that are happening in the school. But with minors, if the parent doesn't bring them, then we can't really, force them to.
Okay.
But yeah, we get a lot of counselors that will call and they'll say, I have this girl and I know she's not in a good place. And, this is what we've heard. And teachers they know a lot.
Yeah. God bless our teachers and our counselors.
I know. I don't know how they do it.
No, that would be rough. Well, and I just had another question I was going to ask.
I have a question. So just going back to the parents, how would you say that they can recognize signs? You said just changes in behavior. What can that possibly look like?
So the thing with parents that I have noticed a lot when I talk to kids is that parents will minimize like what their kids are going through.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, okay, this isn't a big deal. This is not this. But to them, to kids, it is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so to get kids to open up to you, even though as an adult, it might not seem like something that's that big of a deal, or you're like, okay, well, it's going to be summer. They're not going to see them. They're going to break up. So what? People break up, but in that little teenager's mind, that's like their whole world.
Yeah.
And so just kind of taking it from that, point of view, for sure, for parents, opens up the door for them to feel safe and comfortable enough to even talk to you, because a lot of times they'll just say, I can't talk to my mom. She'll just be mad at me. She'll just yell at me.
Mm-hmm.
And so they kind of just do it they don't go to parents out of fear. So, for sure that, but also, just keeping that swinging door of communication with your teenager is really important. It's hard to do because teenagers don't want to do that.
They don't want to share.
Yeah. But just trying to do it in a non-judgmental way. We still have to have boundaries with our kids, but we want them to also know that they can come to us. And then, like you said, like just looking for those changes in behavior. If they're not hanging out with their friends anymore, if they're not going to the football games, if they're not, and they're kind of just only wanting to be with that one person, that is, just those major changes in behaviors. If they're trying to quit sports, a lot of times parents will let them because they think it's easier, they're like, okay, fine, whatever. But they really need that structure more than like they need to be forced to get away from this person, even friends, they need to be kind of have time, and it's healthy for them to
have other activities,
to have a life
to
outside of that one person.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Good deal. Okay. So what about what would you tell a parent? I mean, I know a lot of things, kids mimic things from parents, so if your family, if you have violence within your family and things like that, then I think a lot of kids think, well, this is kind of normal because I see it all the time. But what would you say? Let's see, how do I want to, if I wanted to talk to my kids about how can you be a good friend to one of your friends to know that there might be a problem or something like that. What are some things how can we have that conversation with our kids?
So I always, I let kids teach me when I go in because I want it to be relatable to them. And so I will just ask them, like, what are some things that you have seen? You always got to do it like, well, tell me what happened to your friend.
Yeah.
They don't want to say what happened to them, but they'll tell you, well, my friend. And so some of the ways too for friends is we will just identify like unhealthy forms of communication. That's the first is whether I like to get them to do like make poster boards of unhealthy like text messages and things like that. And so we kind of start there on the conversation of just, he can't send you a text message and expect, be mad at you because you're in class and then now start calling you names and demeaning you and putting you down because you didn't reply to him.
Respond right away.
Yeah. And so, getting those teens to kind of also just leaving the floor open and letting them talk and letting them, because I also don't want to ever over-educate them and tell them something. So I just let them kind of just tell me and then they just take the lead and we go from there. And then what else did you ask me?
It was on how we can teach our kids to watch out for their friends and stuff like that. And then, to help them know what to say to a friend that might be an abusive relationship or where the boyfriend or the girlfriend. Yeah.
So you are correct. Most of the time, these behaviors, even though they may be somebody's normal, they may not just be healthy. So they don't know how to have healthy forms of communication. I think in teenagers, the word love, even in adults, they say, if you love me, you would. So they kind of use that word love as a form of manipulation to control and, recognizing that there is a difference in that's not love. That's not how you prove to somebody that you love them.
Right.
And so I always ask them, like, tell me, how do you know, tell me who's your caregiver, who in your life do you know loves you? And they'll, mom, dad, whoever. And then I'll say, okay, well, what is it that they do? And I get them to identify those behaviors. And so then also getting them to identify those behaviors and say, okay, so what is it that this person's doing? He's not doing any of those.
Right.
Your parents don't do those things. Your grandparents, whoever's loves you, they don't do those things. So why is it okay to do it? Why is it okay for him to do it? And sometimes they just need that like form of acceptance or need to be needed. And they think, oh, well, it's because he really loves me. Jealousy is a big one. They think for whatever reason, if they're jealous, that means love. They kind of just have like a false sense of the definition, I guess, of words and what it really is. When jealousy, it's like, that's not a good thing, and trust and identifying even those things in healthy like friendships. Sometimes, identifying those, like, what is trust in a friendship? What is trust in a relationship? What does that look like on a day-to-day basis? And what does that not look like? Kids that are raised in family violence, that are in it every day, it is their normal. There's the adverse childhood experiences study has been kind of popular lately. And I was just doing that yesterday in juvenile services, and just the things that these kids, what happens is that when that becomes their normal, they are desensitized to emotions. And they don't recognize when somebody is feeling scared. They don't recognize when somebody is feeling sad or even happy. And so they just kind of check those things out. And so that's another thing that's really like, it's little, but just helping kids identify emotions, because they will just minimize them. They might know it's not right, but they don't know that it's really not right. They'll just kind of be like, well, he said it's because he loves me and I've never been in love. Maybe this is love, And so helping them kind of just like identify and talk about it. And even if kids just talk about it, if they're having those conversations about, like, okay, well, I don't think that's right. I don't think that's normal. And like I said, 75% of teenagers are going to talk to each other. So, if one of them starts the conversation off in a healthy direction versus, well, my boyfriend does that too. I guess that's normal. That's what they're supposed to do. Or if you loved him, you wouldn't do that. Just changing those. What is love? What does that look like for them?
I have a question with I don't know what you call the ones that are giving the abuse, but is there typically like a common denominator with a lot of the ones that are abusive, maybe with their upbringing or their just how their personalities are, or because I almost feel like a sort of sympathy for them in a way. I know that sounds weird, but like, why do you think that's okay to abuse people? And it almost, I know we said, well, maybe they got abused, or would you say that there's some common factors maybe?
Yeah, so they definitely do lack, like I said, the ability to have empathy, to see somebody else's emotions versus like their own, like just to recognize that and see that it's wrong. Sometimes I try to get them to be in a, like, even if I give them the example, I'll say, well, have you ever been somewhere and somebody just made you feel creepy? And it could have just been the way that they looked at you. You don't have to know that person. They don't have to touch you at all, but they just gave you this weird feeling. And sometimes there are kids that'll just say, nope, don't know anybody. I've never felt creeped out. And a lot of times that is just because for whatever reason, they just do not recognize their own emotions, whether it's from being a little bitty kid, or they just lack the ability to recognize those things. And really, it goes a long ways. I mean,
it really does.
To recognize the fact that what you're saying, even in bullying, to recognize that what you're saying is hurting that person and to stop it. A lot of times they just don't care. So yes, I would say yes, because statistics probably say the way that they are up, like raised, has a lot to do with how they're going to be in their relationships. But then whenever I'm in the schools, I feel like there's not really, it's not like, I feel like it's pretty equal. Like even, especially, I mean, think about even in bullying, like the mean girls and things like that. It's like some of those kids, they might just be spoiled.
Yeah.
I don't know another way. It might just be, I don't know if it's entitlement or just that they think that they can. And so I do see a lot of that too, where you're just like, they just think that they can because of, I don't know.
So in other words, it can literally be anyone.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. And I think it's something that happens gradually, I tell people all the time, I'm like, because people come to my office, I don't know how I got here. How did this happen? How am I here? Why I would never have done this. I'm like, well, nobody rides up on a white horse and gets out and then calls you a bunch of names and puts you down and hits you and says, all right, let's go get married. And you're like, okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's just not how it starts out.
Yeah.
It's a slow, gradual process. And so it's constantly, you're having to try to check and say, am I still happy? Do I still feel safe? Do I still feel like I can talk to this person? And then once our emotions are involved, it becomes harder to leave once you have feelings for that person. So
yeah, I can see that.
Trying to leave, especially I think at school too, when they're stuck there, and if they've been in this relationship and they feel like they're stuck, and maybe they have been isolated from their friends and they've kind of stopped talking to them, then they start thinking, okay, well, if I break up to him, my friends already hate me because I don't talk to them anymore. And now he's spread these rumors about me or she, and now I have no one. Like, who am I going to talk to at lunch? Who am I going to sit with? What am I going to do in this class? And so it kind of just becomes a really, I don't want to say that they feel trapped, but I think sometimes they do feel trapped, like within the walls of the school.
Yeah.
And it's hard to they're like, well, I can't, it's not summer yet. Still have a while.
I could see that even, not even if it's dating, but even with some friends can be very manipulative and things like that.
And technology plays a huge part in this. I mean, I think back when I was a kid, even when I was in high school, I had a cell phone, but it didn't have internet. You didn't have, if you had internet, you had a computer in the living room, know? Yeah. And so it wasn't just easily accessible at our fingertips. And so if you were bullied at school, you went home, you left it. If you were bullied at school and summer happened, you didn't have to hear about it. Now these kids have to hear about it all the time. They never catch a break. And that's a thing too for parents is turning off those phones or taking them at night is not, you're not going to ruin their life.
Well, and sometimes I wonder too, some parents give their kids these devices, I think, way too soon.
Oh,
And
like 6-year-olds.
I know, see, and I don't understand that.
I'm like, they can't even type. If they misspell something on there, they're going to probably find something that I don't even want to see.
Yes, I know what you mean. Yeah, I think technology is such a huge thing. Plus, even, what's on TV nowadays, I think it really has desensitized a lot of people. And it's, I don't know if you would say it's become kind of a norm that people see some stuff. I mean, all kinds of things on TV. And I don't know. I think that's one of the things that may make things harder for our kids now. And that's why it's really important that parents have these conversations with their kids. If there is an opportunity, we're really big on, we always talk about having conversations with your kids all the time. And so when something comes up, on a show or something like that, that's an opportunity. What would you do in that situation? Or, things like that. So again, having those conversations is so important.
Yeah, I just asking an open-ended question. Well, what do you think you're going to do? How would you handle that? How do you think that would work out? And just seeing where your kids go, because that's all you want them to learn to think on their own, not just, oh, I can't do that because my mom says she's going to be mad.
Yeah. I think when I was a kid, that might have been one of the things that might have kept me from doing some stuff, because I knew I'd have to deal with my parents. But I don't know that kids, I don't know. Studies show that kids really do listen to their parents, even though a lot of times parents don't believe that's true. And when I look back even on myself, my parents really did have a big influence, on me. And of course, if I had a guilty conscience, I would tend to tell on my own self,
Yeah, that was me. My mom would still say that. She's like, you could never get away with a lie.
And a mother would look at me and she would just know. And it's like, then I'd spill the beans.
Yeah.
So, and my kids always told me that I just had this look. If I looked at them, it's like, okay, mom kind of probably knows what's going on. But I will say, I was really lucky with my kids. I had a hard time talking with my parents. And I think it's a generational thing too, because, they didn't talk about certain things. They didn't talk about sex. We didn't talk about dating much, other than the fact my dad always told me, well, you need to be at least 16 before you go out. And then I'm not even sure if that's even, going to be the time for you to start dating. But I don't know. I wanted to be able to talk to my kids. And so we did have a really good relationship. And of course, both of my kids are married now and are starting to have kids. And so I'm always forwarding things to them, even though their kids are really little. It's like, this is good information to know and to think about in the future. And
it is hard. I have a little one, and it walks a fine line of, you want to have those conversations with them, because I also have seen this at my work, is kids that are very sheltered. It's not always a bad thing, but then at the same time, it's like, oh, look, something shiny. Let's go.
Yeah.
Instead of like, oh, wait, there are tricky people. There are bad people. There are, and so you do kind of have to have those conversations that are maybe not fun. And it's not just like, oh, no, we're just not going to talk about that.
Right.
Because you want them to know, you want them to know, like, just because it's shiny doesn't mean that it's
a good thing.
Yeah.
What do you think is a good age to start talking to your kids about this?
I started with my son, which I'm a sexual assault advocate, so we start real
out of
early.
the womb, start talking about it.
I know. We were at the restaurant. My son was using like proper terms, and I'm like, I'm sorry, everyone. And then I go to the hospital and I do the sexual assault exams, and so he'll be like, oh, my mom's at the hospital. She has a sexual assault. I'm like, bless his heart. But I start early. Even just with what's appropriate, like a hit hurts and that doesn't make you feel good, even when he was little and like he was out of diapers, but he still might needed help, especially little girls, like washing and bathing, identifying safe people in their life that they feel comfortable, not just safe people that we think are comfortable, but people that they feel safe around. Like, okay, well, would you feel safe if your aunt washed you or wiped you? Would you feel safe if your uncle did? Would you feel safe? And just kind of there is how you kind of do it, and just start with identifying safe situations. Would you feel safe if maybe it's somebody they just met once, and why? Well, I don't know, it just seems weird. Okay, well, and just even just talking about it and getting them to identify, like, okay, well, that was the weird feeling, and that probably means like no.
Yeah.
I saw a deal this morning on the Today Show that Hoda and Jenna were talking about that because, we're going to commercial. Well, let's hold that thought, y'all, and we will come back in just a few minutes.
Hey, travelers, do you want to save money on your next flight? Then pick up the phone and call. That's right, call, because the best prices are not online. They're with SmartFares. See, SmartFares has special deals with the airlines. When they have unsold seats, they use SmartFares to fill them. So you get airline tickets at ridiculously low prices. Our prices are too low to publish online. With the extra money you'll save, you can book another trip or treat yourself to dinner or shopping. So stop searching all of those travel sites to find the lowest price on your next flight. Let one of our SmartFares expert travel agents find ridiculously low prices for you. Call SmartFares today and get the best price on your next flight. Guaranteed. Also, save up to 50% off business and first class tickets.
855-325-1820. 855-325-1820. That's 855-325-1820.
When you're hungry for tender brisket or some delicious homemade cobbler, then look no further than Leach Brothers Barbecue, located at 1106 East Henderson in Cleveland, Texas. Leach Brothers has been family owned and operated since 1950. Take it from me, Taco Joe Orwinski. Todd and his family have been filling my belly breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a long time. Heck, I even have my own booth, open Monday through Saturday, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Come see them for dine-in, carry-out, and all your catering needs.
Hey, there's something you forgot to do. It sure is hot. Are you sweating like a dog? Wait, what? Dogs don't sweat. Oh no, you forgot to get your window tinted. Whether it's the kitchen window that sits in the sun for the hottest part of the day, or you just got new wheels, call Sharp Window Tinting in Burleson. 817-615-9379, or look them up on the web, sharpwindowtint.com.
You're listening to Joco Community Radio.
Welcome back to the second half of the Reach Across Johnson County segment on Joco Community Radio. Joco Community Radio is proud to be the voice of Johnson County, Texas, and is live 365 on TuneIn Radio Network. To listen, go to tuneinjoco.com and download the free app. All of our shows can also be found on any one of your favorite podcast platforms, such as Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, and Spreaker. Check out our lineup and more on jococommunityradio.com. Thanks for tuning in. The episode and more is brought to you by Patriots Claims, making your insurance work for you. Reach out to your Texas sales rep, Nona Reed, at 844.tex.hail, which is 844-839-4245. And I know, welcome back again. And again, we've got Brooke Vaughan here with the Johnson County Family Crisis Center, and we've been talking about teen dating violence as it's Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. And I think just before we were going to break, I had mentioned that on the Today Show this morning, they were actually talking about how sometimes they tell their girls, well, go give so-and-so a hug or go give so-and-so a kiss and things like that. And we don't always think about, why kids can be uncomfortable doing things like that. We need to stop and think, don't make them do anything that they don't feel comfortable with. Just, and I think we're all a little bit guilty of that, or at least I have been as a parent. It's like, go give grandma a hug and kiss and tell her you'll talk to her later and things like that. And sometimes it can actually be a family member that could be doing some of the so dangerous things.
Oh, for sure. Definitely. So for sexual assault statistics for minors, it is like 95% chance that they know their abuser. So that person is either related to them, it's a close family friend, it's a cousin, it's a neighbor, it's somebody that is close. And so it's hard because we might think, okay, well, we know Aunt Susie, but Aunt Susie might live a different state away and the kids don't know her. So, we don't want our kids to be disrespectful, but at the same time, pushing physical affection sometimes like can just send a weird message to kids of, well, I guess I have to do things that I'm uncomfortable with, you know?
Yeah. Did y'all hear that word bleep? Sorry about that. I don't know what it was.
On that though, I think it's crazy because my sister actually started introducing that to her toddler, and we were just like, that's not normal. And so it's just like, what do you mean you don't want to give me a hug? Even though it's nothing, like she's learning, but it's just a weird concept, especially well, I guess for any family really, but once you're aware of it and like introducing it to your child, it's just like, oh. But at the same time, we were like applauding her because we were just like, that's actually really smart. So
yes, yeah. Sometimes doing something different is weird, you know, to teach your kids or to tell them something that's just not like what is normal, like what you've done and what everybody in your family does for years.
Yes. So that's, I know when my son, he started dating a young lady that had little girls, and it was like he would say, well, go give my mom and dad a hug and tell them thank you and all that. And it's like, they don't have to do that. And it's like, and I think it's because I went through some of the different classes and everything and talking about the ACEs and stuff like that. And I think that's the first time it made me stop and think, did I force my kids to do things when I probably shouldn't have? And I'm really big on the gut feeling. So I always tell my kids, if you get that strange gut feeling that something's not right, then go with it. I said, just because somebody tells you that you needed to, do something, because, at the time it was like one of them was having a problem with the school teacher or something like that. And, you have to have those conversations. If you don't feel comfortable with doing this, then we need to have a conversation, with the teacher or whether it's another adult or
and
something
then,
like that.
And then identifying why. What is it that makes you feel uncomfortable? It can't just be, oh, well, you just don't want to be in that classroom.
Yeah.
Like
there has to be a reason behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I say that. Maybe there doesn't. I don't know.
I think it depends on the situation and probably your kid.
Okay. Yeah.
I know like for little kids, talking to kids about tricky people versus, that, bad people, they look like good people. They're not just like the big van with a bunch of puppies in the car. That's not the normal. Those are just the news stories that we hear. Right. But the normal is your everyday family member, cousin, or uncle or neighbor, that somebody who's close to them, and they with grooming, and they build their they get them to know them and get them to trust them, and then they trick them kind of like, well, your mom's going to be mad at you and you wouldn't get to go live with them, or and say things like that. So there's a whole big lesson on that I do with kids with sexual assault prevention as far as being little, and we talk more about that like not having surprises are something that make you feel good and they're not secrets. And so not keeping secrets is a big one. Is that we don't keep secrets, we keep surprises, because sometimes secrets, even in bullying, they hurt people. They're making fun of somebody, they're hurting somebody. So I just identifying that even those are different, the differences between secret and surprise.
I like that, the surprises. It's a new concept for me to think of it that way. That's actually really good.
Yeah.
Well, I know that we had talked about that we wanted to go back and talk about maybe some more of the facts and statistics that you might have that you could share with us.
Yeah. So every year, the Texas Council on Family Violence puts together an Honoring Texas Victims pamphlet and book, and it talks about all the lives that were taken from the hands of intimate partner violence. So whether that be spouses, partners, whether they're same sex or not, it breaks it all down. And then, but in the state of Texas, we do kind of fall a little bit behind. So the last ones were in 2020. And then in 2020, we had 10 teenagers that were killed by an intimate partner violence.
Oh my word.
And I just think that's so crazy. Like, even though Texas is big and there's, way more than 10 teenagers, I just think that is 10 like girls, that were taken by a boyfriend. Most of them, I think all the teenagers, I'm not 100% sure, but I think all of them were girls taken by boyfriends. We had the youngest set of teenagers in that group. We had two 14-year-olds who were killed. And both of their boyfriends were only 16, and they got sentenced to 80 years. And I think 16 years old, going to spend the rest of your life, like, you only got 16 free years. and that's barely even free because you're not even old enough to really do
I
anything.
know, really. Goodness.
And so, I mean, it is like it's serious. I don't know if it's just like I mean, I don't want to say it's a hot tempered thing, but at the same time, it's like, why are we seeing more of it? Why are we not talking about, sometimes maybe we say you shouldn't be mad. I tell my kids all the time, like, you can be mad. It's what you do when you're mad. That's a problem.
For sure.
Right.
Anger is not the problem. It's your actions. And I don't know if they just kind of get to a point to where they just block that out and they don't care. But 10 teenagers is just a lot.
That's a lot.
That's something too. I'm like, you shouldn't even be really worried about that,
Goodness.
And so, but yeah, they break it all down. They show in that book on the Texas Council of Family Violence website, they have a PDF form and you can go look at it, but it's interesting to read. And it talks about how many, children were involved, and it just kind of, goes there, which also speaks volumes, because if we have, 300 kids that were involved or watched their mom be murdered by their dad or somebody, then,
Yeah.
those are 300, kids that are going to grow up with that type of trauma on their brain.
Right.
And so, I mean, it is interesting to see when we start talking about generational cycles of patterns and of abuse and things like that.
Yes.
So I'm curious, because I think it's become really normal, especially with phones and technology. I think I hear a lot of, their phone went off and I happened to look at their text message that they got from someone else, or I scrolled through their social media. And I think that teenagers today might think that that's really normal. So like, in a parent's perspective, what do you think could we educate our kids on where the line is for, like, this is unhealthy, like, how do we kind of draw that line and teach them to recognize this is toxic, this is unhealthy? Like, what do you think about that?
So social norms for teenagers have just changed so much, because even if a kid gets grounded from their phone, they will give their passwords up for their friends to handle their Snapchats or their, their posts and things, because I'm not sure really why. But it's just become like a social norm for them. And so, I mean, yeah, it's just, once again, just having those conversations with your kids. And I think it is weird because we're in a weird generation of times where parents that are raising teenagers didn't have this problem.
Right.
And so maybe, hopefully, this generation, when they have kids, they'll know like how to talk to them, but I'm sure there'll just be another problem. But, and really talking to them about that's not healthy. Your friends don't have to go through your social media, read your text messages. That's not what friends do, and also making sure that our behaviors are being modeled at home, and our conversations are the same way, that we're not talking to our husband the same way. Well, then let me see your phone, well, I went through your messages and I saw this. What was that about? Because that also probably happens in homes, and then they just think, okay, well, that's normal. Yeah. But yeah, it is hard. I said they said 1 in 3 kids will be in like an emotionally abusive relationship, or mentally, physically, just in any way toxic. But when I have a classroom full of kids, it's never 1 in 3. It's almost, it's at least half. I mean, half of the class will raise their hand that they either know somebody or them themselves have been in a relationship. That it's just somebody's like, and they're like, my friend, you need to make sure you talk to her because I told her boyfriend shouldn't be telling her. And I'm like, okay, we'll send her my way.
Good for that friend.
Or they'll call them out in the class, and I'm like, okay, we don't have to use any names.
Oh, goodness. Well, sorry, the pattern of abuse in dating relationship, we talked about that there is a cycle.
Yeah, so kind of like what I said is nobody is going to come up on their white horse and be like, then get down, but call you all these names and hit you and then say, but let's go get married. And you're like, okay. So what we see is we have the honeymoon phase, and that's just full of like love bombing and just, you're so perfect and all of these promises. I promise I'll never hurt you. I promise I'll love you. I promise I'll never, cheat on you. Things that might feel really like you want to hear. You want to hear those things. Sometimes there's a lot of gifts and flowers and social media posts. And then we kind of goes from there where you go to the tension building phase, which is more of like, I always say, like walking on eggshells. You can never do anything right. If you walk out of the classroom and their boyfriend sees them talking to somebody in their class just as they're walking out the door, now all of a sudden you're cheating on them, and you're, you know, it's just everything you do. If you look, why'd you like that post? Why did you comment on that guy's picture? Why'd you start following her? All those things, just everything you do is wrong. And then we have the explosion building phase, which, you know, a lot of times people just think as physical assault. But this could just be where it's just an extreme outburst of anger, where this person has just started yelling at you, put you down, called you names. We know this is the explosion building phase because it leaves the victim feeling like they're either really angry and they're like, I'm done, we're over, or they feel like they're really shameful. But after this, the perpetrator will instantly go back to the honeymoon phase. So then they will bring the flowers and they will apologize. But the key point there is listen to somebody's apologies. What do they sound like? Because an apology that says, well, I'm sorry, I just had a rough day at practice, and then, you know, coach was yelling at me, and then when I walked in, I saw you talking to so and so when you were walking out of class, I just lost it. So that's not really an apology. That's like, you apologized and you said you had a bad day, but then you still turned around and pretty much made me feel like I was doing something wrong. And so what I talk to the teenagers about is, how many times does that have to happen before you just realize, okay, it's easier to just ignore that person, to make sure that that person's out of the room and I come out of the hallway by myself, you know, that he doesn't see me walking down the hallway with this person. And so then I tell them, I'm like, you can walk down the hallway with anybody you want, you know, like that does not mean anything.
Right.
And so, you know, if you're also feeling like you're having to change something that is innocent to prove to somebody, then that's a sign. You need to listen to that feeling, you know, because that's not going to prove anything. That's just them trying to control you and changing your behaviors little by little. You know, same thing with friends. If they kind of put you down, like for making you hang out with them, or, well, why are you hanging out with your friend? You know, I don't like her. Or she broke up with her boy, you know, my friend, and all y'all are going to do is just sit around and talk bad about us. Like, okay, well, if this starts a fight every single time, eventually they're going to start changing, like, oh, I'm just busy this weekend, or no, you know, and those are kind of the signs that you, as a parent, you look for.
Okay.
Is are they changing? Are they changing their behaviors that they would normally do? And why are they doing that? Oh, they didn't, you know, somebody got mad, or, you know, then that's a big red flag, is when they just start being a different kid than what the kid you're used to.
Do you find that in some of the situations, I mean, is alcohol or drugs involved in some of the stuff? Do you see that very much?
Yes and no, but not really, not so much.
Okay.
I mean, maybe as far as like in the household, but as far as kids using like themselves, no.
Okay.
I mean, we do have those things happen, but not necessarily when I go and talk to them. Now, the peer pressure and the phone and like the sexting and stuff like that, that's just crazy. I mean, that's just that the amount of that happens, and the kids that think that they're just invincible of it. Well, it was on Snapchat. Okay, well, if their parents wanted to subpoena records, they could, you know, and get the detectives involved. So we talk a lot about sharing those type photos and things if they find themselves or being manipulated to do it. Like, that's also a sign of love. Like, well, if you love me, you would send me a photo, or you would do this for me. And just, you know, once again, just that's not love. You know, is that what your parents do to prove their love to you? No.
Yeah, that's really scary, because once it's out there, it's out there. Goodness. Okay. Well, I don't want us to run out of time. We want to talk about the safety plan. So, how to end a power and control relationship safely.
Yeah. So, if teenagers think that they've been in a relationship that is, maybe they feel scared to break up with that person, the biggest thing that teenagers do is they don't talk about it, and so then they want to go, and maybe they want to meet up with this person and talk. Don't meet up in private places. I'm like, go to Starbucks. Chick-fil-A, I don't care. Even a park, you know. Don't go to somebody's house where there's not an adult there. Don't go and say, oh, well, meet me off this county road, you know. Those are just the things, like, you know, just that's not healthy. It's not safe. Making sure people know that you're there. Identifying safe people in your school. What if lunch is what you're worried about because they're going to be there? Then who can you sit with? Or like, okay, well, maybe we do need to get a school person involved. Maybe we do need to talk to a teacher. Well, can they come sit with you at school? At
Right.
lunch, or this is what they're concerned about. This is what they're concerned about this class. If it's walking in the hallways, we had a case out of Glen Rose where, I mean, it was a pretty bad case. And so we went and sat down and came up with a game plan and a person she could walk with in the hallways that got to leave class early to make sure she wasn't ever by herself. And so sometimes it's just coming up with those, like, how would you feel safe? What are you going to feel safe like? Going through phones, blocking numbers and making sure that we eliminate, this contact. And, if they do feel like this person has the ability to get angry and take it, not control it.
Wow. Do you deal with just teens or do you deal with adults too?
I deal with adults. So we wear lots of hats. I'm sure y'all
Yeah,
do too.
yes, we understand
that. So, whenever I was very first hired on, I was hired on as the primary prevention specialist there. But then through COVID and nobody was doing anything, I became the outreach case manager. But things are starting to pick back up. And so I've just been kind of doing both for now.
That was something that it was a big conversation during COVID, is because, some of the kids that may be in a domestic violence situation, they always had school to look forward to go and get out of a situation and everything. And with COVID, there wasn't any place, for them to go.
Yeah.
And
it's really affected the kids, even how they communicate and talk with one another. I never really thought about this, but last week when I was in school and we were talking about, a lot of the kids are dealing with anxiety and depression, and that alone is too a really big sign for parents to watch out for. If you have a kid that has never had anxiety or never dealt with depression and now all of a sudden they are, a lot of times anxiety and depression is not just, it's a situational thing. And so many times we want to treat it with medication when we might need to also look at the situation,
right.
And see what's going on. But it was so funny because I was like, okay, well, what was one of the biggest struggles that y'all had dealt with with during COVID and quarantine? They said, when we came back to school, everybody looked different. And I was like, I didn't really think about that with teenagers, like in puberty age,
Right.
because they change so
Things quick,
much. And then
yes.
they're like, even though we were talking to each other every day, when we finally saw them, it was like, they just looked so different. It was weird. It was like, I didn't have my normal friend.
Yeah, that is a huge thing.
And I was like, I'd never have thought about it like that because, I mean, none of my friends really changed.
Yeah. Yes.
So that was really, I thought it was just eye-opening. I was like, it would be weird.
Well, I tell you what, I know we're getting into the last little bit. So we were talking, briefly about, what a healthy relationship would look like, or healthy behaviors. Is there anything else on that topic that you want to kind of touch on before?
Yeah, just, I also like talking about respect, in healthy relationships, there has to be respect on both parties. It can't just be one person respecting the other person. It can't just be, there has to be compromise, just like in marriages and things like that. It can't just be, well, this is the movie I'm going to see, and because I want to see it, I don't care. You're going to see it. There has to be healthy communication and just all of these different boundaries. Sometimes teens think if they set boundaries, then that's a sign that they're doing something wrong, or they're, it's not, there's not a trusting relationship there. But really it's not. It's like, if you can trust this person, you won't feel like you have anything to prove. They're not going to make you feel like that, like you're in trouble.
Correct.
And so just talking a lot about just mutual respect, really, within, like, what does that look like as far as dating? Because that's different. Mutual respect looks different between you and I and your partner and your boss and everything else. So what does that look like in a relationship?
Good information. Okay, resources for youth in your services.
Yeah. So here we have, there are, at our agency, we provide free counseling and support group services. And so like I said, all of our counselors, we have 4 right now. All of our counselors they're licensed professional therapists that provide free services, free counseling to kids. We have a play therapy room. We see kids about as young as 4, typically, on up. And then we have a domestic violence support group class. We have a parenting class. We have a trauma-informed care class, like a trauma class. And then we also do a self class, which is based off the adverse childhood experiences. And self stands for safety, emotions, loss, and future. And so we do those support group classes. And then also we have a 24-hour hotline at our agency that's answered, mainly for the shelter. So we do have a domestic violence shelter. But, as far as teenagers, that kind of depending on age, how old they are, then if they've been emancipated, I mean, there's all different types of things that go involved. But so that's for us. But there is the loveisrespect.org. And they have a lot of good resources there. They even have kind of like prompts to talk to your kids. They have a safety plan outlined for your kids. So through the drop down links, you can pick like, are you the survivor yourself? Are you the parent? Are you the teacher? And then they kind of give a bunch of different resources there and kind of how, like, well, what does this look like? Well, how do we do a safety plan? What is teen dating violence? So they also have a chat line that's 24 hours. So kids can log on and chat on there. And then they also have a text line. So they can text love is to the 22522. And so they will get a trained advocate that will talk to them. If they're struggling, if they have a friend that's struggling, if they just need to know, like, is this healthy? Is this not? Sometimes just like us, I mean, most of the time we have therapists that are complete strangers because sometimes it's just easier to talk to somebody you're not emotionally connected to. And then here we have the National Teen Dating Violence Hotline. Yeah, number.
And I think we've got all that in our chat that you can go back and look. And then do you want to give information on your website or
so
the best way for people to find y'all?
Yeah, so we do have a Facebook page. I'm sure we have them on all.
All the different links. Yeah, and I think everything may be listed on there.
So it is just the Johnson County Family Crisis Center. And then we are located in between Cleburne and Joshua, but we're closer to Joshua, like right past the Brookshires. And the best way to reach us is if you want counseling, to call our office number at the 817-558-7171 and set up an intake. We do those in person or over the phone. And then if for whatever reason, they need shelter, that shelter numbers, we take clients in 24 hours a day. So they can call the 817-641-2332 number at any point in time and we don't have to have a police report to bring them into shelter. It could just be that they call and they say, he left for night shift and this is what happened and I need a place to go and I have my kids. Do y'all have room?
Oh, that's good information. Okay.
So,
all right, good deal. Well, and then you wanted, so the loveisrespect.org, that's where you were talking about where you can go in and get the safety plan and all that's on there. So that
and then they also do have the chat line. So that's even good. The chat line's good for parents too. Like maybe you have a question as a parent, like why is my teen acting like this? Should I be concerned? This is what I found on their phone. This is what, somebody's brought to my attention.
Okay. I was going to ask too, before we leave, I understand that there was a Senate bill and I didn't write down the number or anything, but it's requiring that, teen dating violence is actually talked about in schools, or that there's some sort of curriculum. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so they have always kind of been able to. Normally the counselors do it through guidance lessons. That's whenever they would reach out to me and have me come out and do them. But now I think that it is, like, I think Abbott in December placed it to where it has to be like one of the topics, but it is one of those opt-in, opt-outs kind of. I think that parents can opt out of it if they don't want their kid in it. So.
Well, listen, Brooke, we really appreciate you coming on with us
Thank you
today.
for having me.
A lot of really good information. And again, the Johnson County Family Crisis Center, their office number is 817-558-7171. And we want to thank you very much for joining us for this evening's episode. And we hope to see you again next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
From Burleson to Venus and Grandview to Godley, this is the voice of Johnson County, JOCO Community Radio.
Are you paying too much